So it's fair to say there's a lot of cars out on the roads these days. I've already done a couple of videos going over how many cars there are in the UK and how many there are in the US. Spoiler alert, there's a hell of a lot of them, well over 100 million in America and dozens of millions of them over here in the UK as well. But which are the best-selling cars of all time? Which cars are the most common out on the roads? Well, if you take the stats and look at all the cars that have ever been sold, there's some really interesting entries in this. Some that are relatively new and others that have been not on the roads, or you're very likely to see one these days, but historically they sold extremely well. So let's have a look at them. The top 10 best-selling cars of all time. Now, when I say a specific car, I don't refer to a specific generation. What I am referring to is that car brand. So let's just say, for example, let's take an example that isn't on this list. The Mercedes C-Class or something like that, or the Jaguar E-Type. There's been many different generations of those car brands, but we would collate them all together to see which one has sold the best. So even the Gen 1, the Gen 2, the Gen 3, put them all together, and what do you get? These figures. So we're going to start off with number 10, the BMW 3 Series, a very popular car in Europe. You see them a lot on the roads in the UK, and it's fair to say they don't have the best reputation, but when it comes to sales for BMW, they've done very well over the years. BMW have sold 16 million 3 Series ever since it was first introduced back in 1975. It's basically an estate car, a saloon car, or I think Americans would probably call it a sedan. I think that's what they call it over there. So yeah, it's a very, very popular car, even if the drivers that normally pilot them are not the best. But there we go. Chicken and egg scenario. Is it the car? Is it the driver? I don't know. That's a very philosophical question. But here we go, this is one of the older ones that I was talking about, the Ford Model T, which sold 16.5 million units back in the day. This was the first ever mass-produced car, and it sold between 1908 and 1927. I mean, if you take it as the overall volume of cars, the percentage of cars on the road, I would very, very confidently bet the Model T during its heyday would have been a larger percentage than any other specific car through history. So what I mean by that is that there was probably like 1 in 3 cars on the road were Model Ts back then, because cars were nowhere near as popular. They were very much a luxury item before this. Still kind of a luxury item to get one of these, I'm sure, but it was much more affordable, and Henry Ford really revolutionised not just the automobile, but also revolutionised people's working patterns as well, inventing the 5-day working week, the 9 to 5 as well. I always see that quoted online. But let's not talk about too much about Henry Ford. If you want to go down that rabbit hole, we'll do it. But purely from a car point of view, he did a lot of good there with that one. That was very much revolutionary. And it's another Ford that's next up, the Ford Fiesta. Again, a really, really popular one here in Europe. They have sold 17 million of these over the years. Incredibly, the Ford Fiesta has actually stopped being produced now, which I did not know. It stopped being produced last year, but it was first introduced all the way back in 1976. It's no wonder that Ford have sold a lot of these over the decades. Next up, we peek behind the Iron Curtain for the Lauda River. Now, if you guys don't know what the Lauda is, it is an absolutely incredible car. You will probably never see one here in the West, but if you ever go to Eastern Europe, you will see them quite commonly. They are quite popular still to this day. It's not uncommon to see one at all, because they sold 17.75 million of these back in the day. It was basically the Eastern Bloc's basic people car, pretty much. It was built like a tank, it moved like a tank, but very, very popular, and there's a real soft spot in collectors' eyes when it comes to these as well. Incredibly, it was first introduced in 1980, and it was still being produced all the way until 2020, so someone was still making it even then. So incredible, really. But again, that just goes to the sale numbers really as well. Next up in number 6, a car with another reputation, it's fair to say, here in the UK, the Vauxhall Corsa, or as it's known to our European cousins, the Opel Corsa. It's only known as Vauxhall here in the UK, I believe. In the rest of Europe it's known as the Opel, but whatever it's called, they've sold 18 million of them over the years. It was first introduced produced back until 1982, but it wasn't until 1993 when they first arrived on British shores as the Vauxhall Corsa, where there it became a real, again, a reputation car. Definitely one of the hottest of hot hatchbacks back in the day, something you will always see out and about on the roads. And I believe as well, I did a recent video going over the car that's got the most likely to be in an accident pretty much. And unsurprisingly, top of the list by some distance was the Vauxhall Corsa. Again, that tells you all you need to know really. Next up in number 5, and I thought this would have been higher to be honest, but it's not, it's the VW Beetle. Now the Beetle has been around for a very, very long time. The VW Beetle was originally produced between 1938 and 2003, a production run of coming up to 70 years. It has been since reinvented as a new modern Beetle. It's still something that's made by Volkswagen to this day. But yeah, I think the rule is if you take it as a single car, because that one car, that one original Beetle was produced that entire time, it's the best-selling car of all time. But because other iterations have come up, that bumps the number up to around 23 million, but it's still only number 5 on the list. So what's higher than the Beetle? Well, none other than the Honda Civic, a very iconic car for sure from Honda. Really one of the first popular cars coming out of Japan and coming to the West. 24 million of these bad boys have been going. It's been on the road now for nearly 50 years and it's still going strong in terms of its sales, in terms of its style. Honda Civics are good cars. I'll die on this hill. I will absolutely go for it because, you know, they are just solid cars in and they're very reliable, relatively simple. Of course, they've got some flash stuff in them nowadays with the modern tech and all that. But yeah, very, very good car, a very worthy entry in number 4. Number 3, a real surprise for me. I did not realise this car was this popular. The Volkswagen Passat. 28 million of these things have been produced. I have to admit, one of the most boring, ugly, unimaginative cars in the world, but popular. Very popular as it turns out. It's been going since 1973 and I believe they're still making it. Yeah, they're still making it 50 years on, so fair play to VW. Clearly whatever they're doing is working, but yeah, I cannot imagine a much more boring car really. But not a boring car, another VW, the Volkswagen Golf. 35 million of these have been sold over the years. It's been going for like 45 years, no, 50 years. 1974 it first rolled off the production line. Again, another long-lasting VW car that has sold extremely well, you know. The Volkswagen Golf and the GTI models and stuff like that, they went through a weird period in the early 2000s, but they've since become a good car. I know one of my good friends has a Volkswagen Golf, and I think it's a GTI version actually as well. It's a fine car. It's a really good car, you know. They've really done a good job in souping it up and bringing it to the modern era. But that's number 2 on the list. What is number 1? Well, if you know cars and you know certain creators like Real Life Law on YouTube, one of my favourite YouTubers back in the day. I don't watch him so much now, but one of the units that he used to use to explain his videos was using a Toyota Corolla, and they use the Toyota Corolla because it's the best-selling car in the world by far. Like I said, the Golf is on 35 million, the Corolla, 50 million of these bad boys have been sold by Toyota. It's been going now since 1966. It's almost 60 years old since the first one rolled off the production line. It's still going. It's a very dependable, like the Honda Civic, it's a very dependable, reliable car, everyday use, not very flash. It does the job. It's fantastic, and it's no wonder that the Corolla is number 1. I will though give an honourable mention not only to the stats pick. I've seen a few different articles, but the one I've read from today is townfairtire.com. I've seen a few different articles quoting these same stats, so yeah, it's free information at the end of the day, but I will shout out the specific one I've used for this. But an honourable mention as well to the Ford F-Series pickup trucks for our American cousins, because in its various guises and various numbers, which do discount it from all being the same one, so it's not just an F-Series, just not known as the Ford F truck series. There's also the ones like the F-150 and stuff like that. They all count differently because they are technically different numbers, they are technically different pickup trucks, but if you collated them all together you get 41 million of those, which puts it at number 2 on this list. It doesn't qualify because of that, but still it's worth a very honourable mention, the most popular pickup truck in the United States, and with that it is a very, very popular car indeed. But yeah, there we go guys, the top 10 best-selling cars of all time. Some of them still going, those numbers will continue to rise. Will the Corolla ever be beat? Well, for me, it's not going to get beat anytime. Whatever Toyota are still making the Corolla, it's never going to get beat for me. I can't see how it can. But let us know your thoughts in the comments below, guys. What is the biggest surprise from this list? And have you owned any of these cars? Odds are some of you guys will have owned one of these, just going off the stats in the past. Let us know in the comments below, and of course, for much more motoring news, analysis, and everything in between, keep it tuned right here to themotoringchronicle.com.